Hi everyone, welcome to the community classroom. This is Dr. Tracey McCarthy, psychologist, attorney, and educator, and we're going to talk about reparations for a second here, and we're going to talk about the idea of an 8-tier track system. Sometimes when conversations turn to discussions related to restorative justice and you're talking about an entire group and you're talking about a large group, there is sometimes a misunderstanding about the dynamics of the whole group, and that might be why some of the conversations and discussions get derailed. One of the things that people need to keep in mind is that everyone did not suffer the same harm. And so it might help to start to think about a tiered track system in terms of what types of restoration would be beneficial and just for different groups of people under that class of ADOS. If this video appears on anything other than Dr. Tracey McCarthy, it is stolen and unauthorized. Let's get started. Now, remember, when you're talking about a justice claim with such a large group of people and the people under that big ADOS umbrella, those people are diverse. And you have a number of dynamics that are going on, and we've talked about some of these, and so we're going to bring some of that home under this umbrella. When you have a large group like that, you have people who have differential claims and differential harms, even under that big umbrella. And so it's important to break that down because different people will be entitled to different forms of restorative justice simply because of how complex this whole dynamic is. And so we're going to go through 8 tiers for you to think about in terms of who should be restored in what way or not. And so the first tier of consideration is the straight ADOS tier. And this is descendants of enslaved ancestors of chattel slavery. This is distinguished from Tier 2, which is also ADOS, but this is descendants of slavery disguised as court-ordered indentured servitude for private profit. And then you have the tier of Tier 3. You have individuals who were Jim Crow victims. They are still living today. You have descendants of Jim Crow victims also. Now, these individuals may or may not be descended from enslaved ancestors. And so again, you want to be very careful about this because many people have not traced their ancestry and determined with certainty that they certainly are descended from someone who was enslaved in one way or another. However, those same individuals may be Jim Crow victims or descendants of Jim Crow victims. And we're going to talk about what Jim Crow looked like so that you can see visually what we are talking about here. Then for Tier 5, you have descendants of hybrid ancestry. So you will have individuals who may be descendants of enslaved ancestors. However, they may also have on the other side of the family enslavers as ancestors. And so that needs to also be considered. And so that's a hybrid class. You also have Tier 6, and this is another hybrid class. These are individuals who are descendants of hybrid ancestry where they may have been the beneficiary of Jim Crow, and they may also have ancestors who were victims of Jim Crow. So you've got this hybrid dynamic going on, and that may be the case for a number of people. So again, you want to be prepared for this because again, this will be a defensive issue that will be put on the table. Now you have Tier 7 and Tier 8. Tier 7 is pretty simple. These are individuals who may look like they are ADOS, but their descendancy is denied. They are not ADOS. They don't claim to be ADOS. They reject that entire identity. So you can take those individuals off of the table. So this simplifies things, and it's a significant number. The other group that you have that you need to consider in terms of this reparations dynamic, this restorative justice conversation, is this Tier 8. And these are unclean hands. This is an equity dynamic. These are people with unclean hands because they participated in the obstruction of the justice claim. Those individuals, one way or another, should be precluded from receiving any benefit from the process. These are not individuals who say, I just don't believe in reparations. These are individuals who actively participate in obstructing the claim of justice. Now, by now, you are probably aware of the fact that a number of people are claiming that history was told in reverse, and that also includes the reversal of Jim Crow. And so what we're going to look at are depictions of what actually took place in relation to Jim Crow. We're going to look at a dynamic called Out Yonder on the Road, so that there will be no further misconceptions related to what was actually taking place during this time period. And so we're just looking at a discrete time period, but you will get to see visually some of the dynamics that were going on. Now, some people are going to say, but many people suffered that. And indeed, many people did suffer during this time period. However, what you had going on was a dynamic whereby there was a violation of the social contract with the citizens, with the people. There was a violation of the duty of parens patriae, and parens patriae is that father of the country duty. It is the duty of the country to treat the citizens as children, and all of the children are supposed to be treated similarly. And so what you had going on during that time was a dynamic whereby relief and support for basic human needs, these things were provided in a differential fashion. And so only based upon this caste system, based upon phenotype. And so as you can imagine, that would be inappropriate for a father to do. So it would be inappropriate for a father to look at his 5 children sitting at the table, ready to eat, and then him distributing food to the children based upon the way that they look, and then denying certain children food simply because of the way that they look. Now, I would like to introduce you to the people of the boot heel in the 30s. These individuals were entitled to subsidies from the federal government. These are the sharecroppers. They were out on the road in the middle of the winter, freezing and cold, and these are their belongings. The farmers were supposed to share the subsidies that they received from the federal government with the sharecroppers. And what the farmers did instead was they decided to keep the subsidies for themselves. And so the sharecroppers during this time of economic crisis did not receive the resources that they were supposed to receive from the federal government. Now, it should have been incumbent upon the federal government to give the subsidies directly to who was entitled to the subsidies, not give it to someone acting as an agent for individuals who were supposed to be in receipt. And so this was an act of protest, and they literally lived out on the road, as you can see. And so when you hear individuals creating these revisionist histories related to their versions of quote unquote untold truths, you need to start asking for a little bit more evidence, because this is evidence of the truth. And based upon an interview with an individual who survived this, they spent the winter out in the cold. The individual indicated that this went on longer than what news reports indicated, and that people were literally living out on the road with their babies, their families, all of their food, and all of their belongings out on the road. And here you can see another group of people out on the road. And this demonstration took place over a 100-mile stretch. And some people were equipped with tents, but some people were not. And as you can see, the individuals with their belongings outside. At one point, the president's wife made an announcement to the country related to this dynamic. Now, some people will offer that it was difficult for all people during this time, but again, the way that the parents' patriae process works is that the father of the country is obligated, based upon social contract, to treat all of the children the same. Not only do you have a Great Depression in terms of economics, but as you can imagine, this was a Great Depression in terms of mental health. You have some individuals telling these fantastic stories about how the quote-unquote black people, whatever semantics people are using now, that they were wealthy and they were all rich and people were jealous of them. That is not reality. That may have been the case for a few people, a few discrete people. That was not the case, however, for the majority. There is not a single person on the planet who would be jealous of living in this situation. You have to be very selective related to who you are listening to online. And in the real world, you have a number of people who are trying to make a profit off of these revisionist histories, these stories about everyone had a mansion, people were jealous, people were living the life of Raleigh, that it was the quote-unquote black farmers who were enslaving all of the quote-unquote white people, that Jim Crow happened in reverse along with slavery. This is inconsistent with what you know to be true from your own lived experiences for many of you. This is inconsistent with the narratives even of your ancestors or your elders. You need to be careful about who you are listening to. What is the purpose of them giving you whatever message they are giving you? And is it consistent with what you know to be real? Some people are claiming they had no ancestors who were enslaved. They had no ancestors who lived through Jim Crow. And in that case, they are not the individuals that are being discussed. They are not the people on the table. And so for those individuals, there's no need for you to engage in extended dialogue, extended argument about what is real and what is not real in terms of restoration. Now, many people are rewriting narratives for a variety of reasons. Some are doing it innocently. They really don't know history. Some, however, are being manipulative. They are sensationalizing things, creating these counter narratives so that people will flock to them and listen to whatever it is that they are saying. Some people also are telling counter narratives because they are uncomfortable with the historical narrative. And so in terms of ego, their egos are damaged when they think about the actual narrative, and it's inconsistent with what they want to think about in terms of their own history. So if there's a historical narrative that does not situate them on top, it does not situate them as the entity in control and in power, they are uncomfortable with that narrative. That's about their ego. That has nothing to do with reality, and it has nothing to do with pursuing restorative justice and what is appropriate in terms of that relationship with the parents patriae, with that relationship with the social contract. And so you need to learn how to filter out all of that noise, and it's basically foolishness. You need to learn how to filter that out and stay focused on what is appropriate, what is ethical, what is moral, what is right. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care and see you soon.